Hey, this is Notser, and today we're taking a look at the Tier 6 Premium Italian DD, Leone. We're on the map Neighbors, and this is my first impression of the ship, because the first version was horrendous with its gun velocity. But honestly, this one is not, and I just want to talk about my feelings on it and share this game with all of you. Now, it did have an aircraft carrier, and its AA is awful. There is actually about a kilometer, if you believe it, where the ship is magically detected, and yet its AA can't even fire at the target. So definitely don't rely on this, and definitely be careful of aircraft carriers because they can just keep you completely spotted all the time. But this ship has 2x2 torpedo systems that default go 12 kilometers. I have torpedo acceleration in this build because the speed of the torpedoes is really bad. It's like 50, 49, 48. It's a really bad speed torpedo. On top of that, there's only 2 of them. So I'm trying to enhance it enough that I get a little bit of value out of sending it on cooldown, because the cooldown is pretty short. The Italian DDs, this is our first impression of them. And I think what that means is the Italians are going to have sort of a British gun system. Their torpedoes are obviously going to be different. They're not going to have access to a single launch system, but they may have a faster refire rate of their torpedoes because they're so awful. 4 torpedoes total at tier 6, 2 per launcher. Wow. The T-61 is definitely not envious. The T-61 is laughing all the way to the bank because this is the competition. So, I captured C point for my team, and I'm headed back to B. These are 120 millimeters, and I don't have IFHE. I don't really like spending 4 points on IFHE for DDs. It just feels very wasteful. As long as I can effectively engage my own kind without IFHE, I feel like I can stand to spend those 4 points on something else. Because obviously the torpedoes do full damage to whatever they hit. I can still aim effectively, and I still have AP as an option. So I feel like that's where I want to go, and I don't know if that's necessarily the identity of the Italians or just this Italian DD. So we find the Ernst Gata. This is the guy who was capturing B, and clearly he's successfully captured, and I got a little bit of chip damage on him. And we are just going ham on the broadside. I'm trying to see how effective they can. Not a single one has failed to pin, but we have failed to hit as often as I would like. And we're just doing okay damage, right? Just okay damage. That's really what the Italian DD feels like. It's okay damage. It feels alright, but it's not that overpowered feeling. It feels like every single tool I have has a weakness. Whereas something like the T-61, certain tools, they are without weakness. You know, having hydroacoustic at tier 6, that's a pretty good tool. Don't really think it's a weakness. The torpedo systems, the refire, don't really feel like there's any weakness there. And obviously the gun caliber, I don't really need to compensate with IFHE and feel like I'm doing as much, you know. So, it's alright. I am trying to kill this guy. The rate of fire is a little sluggish. I do have basic firing training to try and help that out. And it is making it feel better, but it's still a really long refire. But that's okay. We were able to do good damage against the target and force him to retreat. He used the smoke, and now I'm going to disengage, drop off detection, and capture the base. Feels fine. The nimbleness of the ship, no issue whatsoever. I don't know how soon we will get an Italian DD line and how much of an emphasis it is to maybe invest in one. I was hoping that we would already have the Italian cruisers. We would be working towards the Italian battleships, and then the Italian destroyers, they would be coming, but obviously definitely nowhere near it. But with the CV rework, the British aircraft carriers, the Soviet battleships, everything has been rearranged where the Italians, nowhere to be found, honestly. It's just premiums. And I think there's like 4, 5 premiums now with the Italians. We've got the Roma, We've got Julius Caesar. We've got the 2 Italian cruisers. And then, of course, Leone. Yeah. You know, the Italians are set up. And I can't wait. And I'm hoping for something like that. I want the Italians. But we capture B point. The Ernst never shows back up. And I only get 1 fire on the enemy. There's only 1 enemy ship dead. And oh, the Ernst. He comes back a little too soon. This should be enough to kill him if we actually aim correctly. I think we're good now. I think we were able to wrap that around and kill that enemy DD. Yes! A couple enemy battleships are north of C Point. I'm going to send torpedoes towards them. And, of course, the enemy aircraft carrier definitely knows who I am. And I think he's definitely going to try and drop me. The AA, non-existent. This feels very Japanese. Japanese DDs have very little AA effectively. And more of the same here. I think that's probably going to be an Italian trait. And I don't know that that's a good trait. You know? It could just be that this premium in particular has terrible AA, but it really can't defend itself for anything. At all. AA-wise. They successfully capture C point. They are contesting A point. My teammates, my actual division mates, are talking about what they're doing at A. And I was, you know, where do I want to contribute? The only other DD is in the northeast side. 2 of my torpedoes are going to be making contact on the Alabama's nose. And we actually hit 3 of the 4 torpedoes, total torpedoes, on multiple targets, cause flood, which will, of course, force out damage control. Enemy warspite knocked out. Nice. Now, one of the criticisms for the play that I did in this game would be torpedo acceleration on this ship is worthless because the torpedoes are so bad, right? That's probably what someone would criticize. But I just feel like the refire is so fast, the concealment is so extended out, 12 kilometers by default. You can't help but invest in these poorly designed torpedoes, and yet they are poorly designed, but if you invest in them, they become actually useful versus useless. I have tried the 12-kilometer range, unbuffed speed torpedoes, and they've just left a sour taste in my mouth. It wasn't impressive. The first version of the ship was not impressive at all. There was nothing good about it. The velocity, you maybe could engage a ship up to 8 kilometers. Maybe. Past that, it was 10 plus seconds for the shell to drop in time. It was horrible. And then, obviously, without torpedo acceleration, these 12-kilometer range torpedoes, they just go so slow. They go so slow. They feel like the black torpedoes, but they do half the damage. And if the black torpedoes did half the damage, I don't think people would be pretty enthusiastic about them. They'd feel they're pretty crappy. So, team was able to maybe unsuccessfully defend A. We lost one of our friendlies. The enemy Normandy is just angled. And I'm thinking, okay, this Normandy out in the open. We are, of course, going to fire on this guy. And what do you bet? I am the target that was actually spotting him. Now, here we get an AP situation. And, of course, he's going to drive straight in, full speed, avoid it completely. And now I have to sort of call an audible. I'm going to switch our focus over to the enemy Massachusetts. So we've seen the high explosive. 1 fire. The Italians' legendary fire chance is once again on display. That is why people may choose to go IFHE, because they're not dropping too much. They weren't going to set fires anyway. And let's be real, I'm Notser. I come with a fire debuff already. The chance to light the target on fire. But with high explosive, you've seen the outcome. Now with armor piercing, we're actually going to get somewhere against these targets specifically, because they've got just enough armor for my armor piercing to stick in the ship, but it's not going to fail to pin. And as long as I locate the shells well, that was one of the issues before. Even with, really effective AP, I couldn't locate the shells very well because the targets at this range, with the old gun velocity, it would probably take me 10 to 12 seconds of shell flight time in order to hit the target. That makes it incredibly difficult. But this is a lot more usable. You can clearly see how effective this can really be compared to the first version if you saw it from another CC. I'm really happy with all the changes that they've implemented on the ship, and I don't know that necessarily this is a ship that's competing with, the T-61 or the Eagle. Those two ships at Tier 6, I think they're better. But this one is sort of a jack of all trades. It's got a more usable torpedo system than the Eagle. It's got way more guns than the T-61, and its concealment is somewhere in between all of that. It doesn't have the utility of hydroacoustic or something like that, but it works out pretty well. And I was pleasantly surprised by this experience. Plus, 8 guns is 8 guns. It's always going to be intimidating. The Kaba, the Cossack, and now the Leone. So we scored 79,000 damage, doing about 20 or 30,000 in AP at the end, just barely beat out by the Colorado, but we are bottom tier. I hope you enjoyed this first impression. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.